Alright, hopefully this new microphone's working and you can hear me, but as you can see, I picked up another project that I don't need. I paid $180 for this. I found it on Facebook Marketplace. And the guy said that he loaned some money to a friend of his, and he kind of took this as collateral until the guy paid him back, and the guy never paid him back, so he wanted it out of his shed. And he never tried starting it or anything. He said it should run, which I kind of figured that wasn't true, because I would assume this would be worth more than $180 if it ran, so why wouldn't you just see if it would start? And it's got an electric start on it. So I stole the battery out of the John Deere 260. So I did try to start it once when I first got home, and I couldn't get it to start, but it was pretty cold out. I'm guessing it was around freezing. So I'm going to see if I can't get her to fire up today. It's, I would guess, about 65 degrees in here in the garage. I really haven't done anything with it. I checked the oil. And one thing I did think was maybe somebody put gasoline in it, but it does look and smell like diesel fuel, which I should drain that. If you look down in there, you kind of see some dirt down in there. But I also bled the fuel system on it, and what these are is they're basically a Chinese knockoff of the 10 horsepower Yanmar.
Don't trust China. China is asshole.
And I guess the parts are even interchangeable. And you can find the parts all over the internet pretty cheap. So hopefully we can get her to fire up. So we're going to see if it'll start today. And if not, then we're going to start tinkering with it. And even if it does start, I think we'll do our maintenance on it, try to clean it up a little bit. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it or not. I might end up getting rid of it, which, who knows, it may go to the scrapyard. Well, let's hook the battery up and see if it'll start. So there's a compression release right here. You flip that down, and then so this should be how you shut it off. That should be run. And I think that's about it. It kind of sounds like something's not right with the compression on it. So I think where I'm going to start is I'm going to pull this off, and I'm going to see if I can't get the valve cover off, and see if we can't check the valve clearances. And also, while I got it apart, I read on the internet that you can pull the injector off and kind of swing the line over, and you can crank it over and see the fuel spitting out. So we might try that. Well, I gotta go to the hardware store and get a new thermostat for that stupid furnace. I don't know if you can hear it kicking on and off or not, but I got that thermostat out of my grandma's house years ago. She said it wasn't acting right, which it seemed like it was fine, and I figured she just wasn't right, and apparently the thermostat was bad. So there's the valve cover, and this is a decompression lever. I don't know exactly how it works, but it holds a valve open to let some of the compression off. So that's, I think, where I'm going to start at. This is the fuel injector. So I don't know if I'm going to pull that off and check the fuel coming out of it. I think what I'll do first is I'll adjust the valves, make sure they're set right. And then we will, because we can start it without all that stuff on. So I think that's what I'll do, is I'll pull that off. Then we'll adjust the valves. So you can see there's not a whole lot to that. It's just, I guess, almost like a little cam in there. And that just presses down on top of that valve. So I'll go see if I can't get on the interwebs and figure out the clearances for these. And we'll go from there. But I think right now I need to charge the camera, and I'm going to run to the hardware store and see if I can find a thermostat. Alright, so as you can see, I kind of messed up here and I forgot to turn the microphone on. And but I didn't notice it when I first took the valve cover off, that one of the push rods was off the rocker. So what I think happened is, from what I've been reading on the internet, I don't have a whole lot of information on these engines, but you're supposed to adjust the valves every couple hundred hours or so. So I'm thinking that somebody never adjusted the valves and it just ended up getting sloppy and popping off. And what I kind of think happened with this generator is the way it looks is kind of faded. So I'm thinking maybe somebody who had worked on construction sites or something had it, and they would wheel it out and let it sit outside all day out in the sun, and because the outlets on it feel pretty wore out. So I think it had quite a bit of use, but it looks really good. So that's kind of what I was thinking, is it was stored inside somewhere but sat outside most of the day in the sun. But anyways, I put the push rod back on and then went to adjust the valves, and the information I found had the intake valve at 0.15 millimeter and the exhaust valve 0.12 to 15, so I just had I used the same feeler gauge for both of them. And we got pretty lucky that seemed to be the problem, and it runs pretty good now. So I just got this, I got the new microphone. Well, I got a new camera and a new microphone. The old camera I had, it was pretty good for the abuse I put it through. And I bought an external microphone for it, and I used it on this one and found out it didn't work, because this camera you have to have a microphone that has its own power supply, so I ended up having to get a new external microphone for this one. So I'm not used to it yet, and I've been pretty good about remembering to turn it on, but I must have missed it. So here what I decided to do is, since I was right there working, I cracked the injector line loose. Figured I'd bleed it just being I was there, just in case. So I cracked the injector line loose and then just spun the engine over a little bit, waiting for fuel to spit out. So I still don't have the microphone on yet, but right in here you can see I fire it up. And I think from all the times cranking it over before with that push rod off, it had a lot of fuel in the muffler there, so that's why it smoked like crazy. At least I hope that's what's wrong with it. But after I let it run outside for a little bit, the smoke did clear up a lot. There's still some coming out, but I haven't really ran it long. I've only ran it for a few minutes so far. But after we get the rest of the parts in, we'll drag it outside and fire it up and let it run for a while, get good and hot. So back to working on this thing again. I just shoved it outside and I fired it up, and I did some checking with the multimeter, and it's not really making anything for power. The most I seen was like 5 volts. So from what I understand how these work is there's a capacitor that can go bad, so I think that's what I'm going to check next. And that's up behind this thing. So hopefully we can check it anyways, if there's no markings on it. Alright, that's good. So we should be able to test this. So years ago I was working on, I think it was the Genie man lift that I was working on, and I needed some way to test capacitors. So I spent like $100 on this one because it would test capacitors. So it's showing 20.7 microfarads, and this is 25 plus or minus 5%. Let's check it again. .82, and we had 20.7, whatever it was. .77. So that would be out of the 5%, but is that enough to have it make nothing like that? I don't know a whole lot about generators like this, so I don't know if I can just swap in a different one. I'm sure I've got some laying around. So I might try that. Actually, I got this one here. Maybe I'll throw that one in there. See what happens. This one's quite a bit bigger than that. But I did test this one. This one is good. And from what I've read, supposedly just throwing a standard capacitor in off of an electric motor, it won't hold up in a generator. I guess the ones for a generator. Nope. So anyways, maybe I'll throw this in there. We'll drag it back out there and see what happens. Alright, well, back from outside, and I got some good news. It actually worked. I was surprised. I didn't get it on camera because it's like 10 degrees outside, and as soon as I open that door, all the heat goes out. So I'm going to order a new capacitor and an air filter. This air filter is pretty nasty. And what else? Well, these outlets, they feel like they're all wore out. So I think I'm gonna change those. I assume you can just put a standard issue one in there. So that's what I'm gonna look into, is changing those. I'll order the air filter and then the capacitor. And I think that's about it. I'm sure I'll think of something else, but so I guess that's what we'll do, is I'll get the air filter and then the capacitor and all that. When that all comes in, I guess I'll make another video, and I'll button this up for now, I guess. Oh, and a wire broke on the other side, which I guess that can be part of another video. I think what I'm going to do is the battery area where the battery sits. I have a lawn tractor battery sitting there now, which it won't fit on the little pad they got there for it. So I think what I might do, I had a lawn tractor that took the smaller battery like that, and I think it takes like a motorcycle battery from what I can remember, and those batteries were like a third of the size, and they cost like 3 times as much. So I think I might cut that little pad off of there and weld in a spacer to where you can put just a regular lawn tractor battery. And then that one wire that goes to the start switch popped off over there, so I got to fix that. And I'm sure there's a couple other little things, but I think that'll be it. Hopefully you can hear me on that new microphone. Alright, well, it's been, I don't know, a week and a half or 2 weeks, and we got our packages in. So there's the old air filter. You can see how nasty it is. So here's the new capacitor, and the old one, you can see, is somewhat smaller, so I'm hoping there's room in there. And where this plugged into, the wires were pretty short in there, which I'm assuming they did because this has a wire already attached to it. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut these wires off and solder them on here. Then we'll pull that apart and see if we can't squeeze this in there. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I just cut the wires off that old capacitor and I'm going to solder them on this new one. So I'm going to put this heat shrink tubing on there to protect that. Then I'm also going to put some on these. That way we don't have anything touching down in there. Alright, let's go put this in there, see what happens. Get it in there. Alrighty, let's go roll her outside and see if she'll start. So I got this light bulb with a light socket thing on it, so I'm going to fire it up and I'll stick this in there to see if it's working. It should, so we'll see. Alright, next I'm going to drain the oil out of it. Since we know it runs and makes power now. So this is supposed to be the oil filter, so we'll have to take that off, and I guess it's just a little screen that you clean out. Well, what kind of idiot designed that? I assume this is the drain plug, but it's hitting this motor mount. Still doesn't move it over. Well, I don't have any more cutoff wheels for my grinder, but I got one of these. So I guess we'll stick that in there and see what that does. So this is supposed to be some type of oil filter. Alright, I'm gonna let that hang there and drain out for a while. Well, there's quite a bit of metal on that. It's kind of interesting. So I guess we'll hose this off. Well, I think that's going to wrap up this project. I don't think I'm going to do too much more to this thing right now. And I've been thinking about whether I'll keep it or sell it, and I think I'm going to keep it for a while. And one reason being is it seems like every time you get your generator out now, the carburetor's all screwed up. So being this thing runs on diesel, that shouldn't be a problem. And I might make another video on it. I think I'm going to shove it outside and leave it for a couple days, being it's like 20 degrees out. I'm really curious to see how this thing would fire up if it was cold. So that's it for this one. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe.